At this point, Grene offers a revision. She proposes a revision to this three-world account. It's her way of getting at her own view. It's not the only way of articulating her view, but it's one way of describing the basic components of her way of thinking about reality and about knowledge, or to use her own description of the main theme of her essay, her way of thinking about man and nature, human beings and nature, and the place of human beings and nature, or the relation between human beings and nature. And her revision is as follows. She says we shouldn't think so much in terms of minds, what Descartes calls minds, which are what Eccles calls world two. We should treat these rather, or we should rather recast this as about persons. And notice that persons are not just minds, but they are embodied. They're kinds of units of minds and bodies. They're minds that are parts of bodies and bodies that express and are continuous with the minds of the agents that guide those bodies. So we need this new category of persons, which is not itself split into minds and bodies as Descartes had split us, but rather treats us as a cohesive single thing, an agent acting in the world, a person. For world three, the world of the forms, the world of intellectual materials, scientific formulae, and so on, laws of nature, world three and works of art, standards of beauty, these things in world three, Grene proposes, should be treated as part of culture. And culture is itself going to be understood as a part of world one. So actually both world two and world three are going to be understood as basically subsets of world one. So world one, the physical world, is going to be recast as nature. The idea there is that treating the external world, or the physical world, or the world studied by the natural sciences as just physical is giving a kind of privilege to descriptions in physics. But what we ought rather to do is to understand that nature may be described by physics, but also by chemistry and by biology and maybe by other fields as well. That nature is a very rich and a less reductively construed phenomenon than just the physical description of it would lead us to believe. Nature is messy, nature is complex, nature is diverse. Okay, nature has a lot of different features to it. It's not just atoms in interaction according to physical laws. It is that, but it's also higher level patterns that we can learn about in biology, for instance. So we should reconstrue the world of bodies, or the physical world, as nature, not just the extended world, or the world of matter and motion, but rather nature, which is a richer and more complex world than just the physical world, as mentioned before. And then we should treat world two and world three as a part of nature, a part of this more complex natural world as it's understood in this category of nature. And those two components are, in turn, culture and persons. Grene provides a nice diagram of this picture here. So notice that the natural world box is the largest one. And inside that box, there's a subset, which is cultural things, or culture. And then as a part of culture, there are persons. And persons, notably, are informed by culture. Persons are in Grene's view, a kind of construct. They're constructed by culture in its interaction with human organisms. So all of us are organisms, we human beings, we're animals, but we're animals that have been shaped by our cultures. And so culture shapes us and makes us into persons, not just human animals, but into persons. And our personal dimension, our existence as persons, is something that we manifest in the ways that we do partly because of our having been formed by culture in the way that we are. So we can't be persons without culture. Culture enables us to be not just animals, but also persons. And she describes this view in this quotation from the essay. Persons are human organisms. They are members of World One, that is nature, but World One personalized. They have subjective experience, but they are animals, subjectively experiencing animals, yet as surely embodied as any other animals. And like other animals, they're also physical systems as well. But they achieve the personalization of their bodily and physical nature through participation in a culture, that is, in World 3. So again, they become persons through participation in a culture. In other words, to be a person is an achievement of a human organism mediated by participation in a culture. Or to put it still another way, a developed human being is at one and the same time a personalization of nature and an embodiment, that is a bodily physical manifestation of culture. Now, I won't go into detail about this, but Grene spends a little bit of time pointing out how this view avoids the problems with dualism. So we can better understand, she thinks, in this way, how our minds and bodies can interact. If minds are an attribute or a capacity of organisms of a certain kind, a capacity that they can only actualize through the influence of culture and perhaps through the medium of culture, then we better understand how some entities in the world can both be bodies and have minds, and the minds and bodies can interact with each other. If we understand humans in this way and their place in nature in this way, then we can also understand how human beings can communicate with each other and how they can know each other's minds. They know each other's minds through the externalization of their minds in culture and in language, for instance. We can also better understand the relation of our subjective experience to the external world. We have sensory abilities to pick up information from the environment like other organisms do, but these sensory abilities are affected by, and in some cases enhanced by, our information through culture. So culture, including, for instance, artifacts, technologies, language, these things enable us to access parts of the world and let's say, detailed aspects of the world in ways that we wouldn't be able to if we were just human organisms. So culture supplements the link between our subjective experience and the external world. It enriches our subjective experience, and at the same time, by doing that, it's also enriching our embodied interaction with the world in a way that counts as knowledge.